Hello, my name is Nyree and I'm running an adoption support channel for potential new or experienced adopters. I have two adopted sons, and today we're going to talk about what it's like to live with children who potentially have fetal alcohol syndrome or one of the conditions around fetal alcohol exposure. Many children go undiagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome because many of the children do not necessarily have the facial defects that we normally associate with this condition. So if you think you have a child that's been exposed to alcohol in the womb significantly, there is a chance that your child may have fetal alcohol syndrome. And so even if you don't have a child that's diagnosed with this, I think you'll find this video really useful, because even if people do not seek out a diagnosis, it's helpful to know what behaviours there are that you will be faced with on a daily basis and a little bit about the condition. It's going to be that you have to work with the situation rather than cure it. So I'm going to structure the video into three parts. We're going to talk about generally how the brain is affected by fetal alcohol syndrome. Then we're going to look at some research that's been done about how carers and parents have said this affects them. And then we're going to look at practically daily the types of behaviour that would happen on a day-to-day basis with a child that has fetal alcohol syndrome. And some of these I experience myself on a daily basis. Number one, working memory. Number two, short-term memory. 3 is planning and organisation. 4, receptive language. 5, obsessions. 6, hyperactivity, fidgety. 7, inattention. 8, lack of social understanding. 9, impulsivity. 10, lack of judgment. 11, no understanding of consequences. 12, central nervous system damage, so they might experience more pain, hunger, have problems with temperature, regulating toileting. And 13, concepts, trying to understand time, money, ownership. And 14, relationships, over-friendly, appearing to have attachment issues. So that's your list of 14, and that's massive. But one of the issues around fetal alcohol syndrome is that it overlaps with other childhood conditions, making it even more difficult to diagnose. Dr. Maherji and others then looked at how this impacts on carers and parents and how this plays out for them. So carers reported in 2013 that they found there was a lack of information around fetal alcohol syndrome and a lack of knowledge amongst professionals. They were having to fight for things. They were feeling misunderstood and blamed. They had family stress and difficulty of providing lots of one-to-one attention for their child, and they felt isolated and had concerns for the future. So maybe that's you, and if that's you, well, I really hope this video does help to support you. Now, every day, how does this play out? So what types of things may it impact when you're parenting? Because this is what you really need to know for me, is how is this looking every day, and having the reassurance that you're not alone in this situation. So what I find then is I'm having to repeat the same instruction many times, and making sure that I have eye contact from one of my sons in particular to make sure that he's understood and he's processed what I'm telling him. I also find that this particular son goes into a rage really quickly for no reason. So there isn't necessarily an obvious trigger. Like when you're looking at normal behaviour parenting, you're looking for a trigger and you're trying to avoid that trigger, or you're trying to talk about it. I find that this can go from 0 to 100 really quickly, and you can't always know what that rage is about until later on, perhaps. Carrying out rash acts, so things that are risky, but then being really surprised about the fact that there'll be repercussions or things that you have to do as a result of that. So if I give you an example, one of my sons really hurts the other one, then they would be really surprised that we would put measures in place and perhaps say to them, okay, there'll be a repercussion for that, so you're going to have less telly time or whatever it is we put in place. And then often not understand about things they're told off for. So let's take that example again. It's obvious that you don't want one child hurting the other child, and yet sometimes I feel like my son's really surprised when I'm saying to him that that's not right. It's almost as if he can't process that there will be consequences for any of the actions that he carries out. Lots and lots of fidgeting, squirming, fidgeting. I'm always saying, do you need to go to the toilet? Because one of my sons in particular never stops moving, always moving. And that will include then, in between activities, being really restless about knowing what's going to happen next, potentially even pacing the floor and sort of moving around the house a lot, running up and down the stairs, never walking anywhere in the house. And then when it comes to injury or even touch, I found that oversensitivity to touch and almost feeling that when you're touching them, even in a light manner, that it almost hurts. And that means that when there's a minor injury, a scrape or a bruise, then there's a lot of noise and a big reaction to that injury, much more than you'd expect normally to happen. Not wanting to take responsibility goes back to some of the things I was saying. There's definitely not a chain of understanding that if you do something that's unpleasant to somebody, or you carry out an act that's unpleasant, that you have to take responsibility for what you've done. It will always be somebody else's fault. It will always start from someone else and never from him. I'm thinking of one child in particular. Very, very possessive over friendship. So if there's a good friendship, then that friend has to be the only friend and cannot be shared out. So the friendship is more like owning something than actually having a relationship. Again, I know that that crosses over with other childhood conditions, which is what makes it so difficult to diagnose. Often needing one-to-one attention, guidance and explanation. And when I say often, I mean nearly all the time. There will always be a checking process that something that we've asked to happen is actually happening. It's very, very rare that we can just leave this particular son to do what he needs to do, but both of them actually need a constant guidance throughout the day. And this, of course, is exhausting for any parent. And only can think about the here and now and wants to know exactly what's going to happen next. Exactly, not what might happen next, but exactly what's going to happen next, and cannot project into the future. So if you have a child that's displaying some of these things and you know there's a history of alcohol there, you may want to start thinking about pursuing diagnosis. But what I will say is that it will be a rocky path to get there. In our country, in the UK, there aren't that many places that diagnose. This could be different, of course, in your country. The trouble with diagnosis is it doesn't change the way that you have to parent, but what it does do is give options for extra support and help later, and a greater understanding for people that are dealing with your children later, whether it be employers or schools, of what actually the problem really is. And so for us, actually, we are beginning to start looking at different assessments to bring together to see what some of the issues are around our sons. And we've held back for a long time with this because we've been doing lots and lots of therapy and other types of support for our sons. But there comes a point, doesn't there, when attachment is not the answer for everything. And actually, if things impact the daily living of you and your family, or education or development, then sometimes it is time to branch out and seek out and get that extra support and advice for your child. I hope this video helps you. If it does, then I'm really, really glad. And I have lots of different playlists on my channel about adoption and parenting, bonding and attachment, and I'm sure you'll find them useful. So please subscribe if you would like to my channel, and I'll see you on my next video.